Will Stuff on conservativereport.org, and we do have Daniel Horowitz once again from the Madison Project. Daniel, thank you so much for stopping by.
Hey, Bill, it's always great to be with you.
The Madison Project, for those of us who don't know what it is and maybe people hearing about it for the first time, tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do for candidates that are entering the race for 2014.
Absolutely. You know, everyone on both sides of the aisle complains about Washington. Oh, they're terrible. They don't listen to us. They have a 7% approval rating. Well, we're actually one pack where we say, you know what? We're not just going to talk about it. We're going to do something. And we're going to be intellectually honest about it. And even though we're conservative Republicans, we're going to work to change leadership in both parties. Leadership of both parties has failed us. They both have supported the circuitous cycle of big government. And we're finally going to, nominate guys and help endorse guys, support them, in a way that is different from before. These are complete outsiders that have pledged term limits in most cases. In most cases, they're coming from the private sector with a private background, and they are completely committed to constitutional form of government, even if that means stepping straight over Republican Party leadership. So these are all Republican candidates, but they have no allegiance to the Chamber of Commerce crowd, to GOP leadership. So that's what we do. We try to recruit and support these candidates. Also, we're very big on ground game. If you heard some of the post-mortem of the 2012 elections, we all found out that the Republicans did a horrible job organizing on the ground, and Obama just killed us. It's really a vacuum in the Republican Party in general. So that's a void we try to fill with our candidates to work with kind of local conservative activists, Tea Party groups, to have a very strong ground presence coming into the primaries. That's kind of the 30,000-foot view of what we do.
So Madison Project helping out Matt Bevin in this Kentucky race. What are some of the things you guys are doing on the ground with him? Give us an idea of what's happening in Kentucky.
Sure. Whenever you're dealing with an incumbent, a 30-year incumbent, certainly someone like Mitch McConnell, who's been there forever, and he's a sitting minority leader, he has millions of dollars in the bank, it's always hard for a conservative insurgent to obtain name ID. Too many people focus on, does this angle of attack work, that angle of attack? Usually the issue is he can't even, get on the radar. When you're talking about a totally new candidate, you're starting out with zero name identification. And the sad reality is, as much as people complain about incumbents, they will not vote for someone that they don't know. They're not going to vote for a new candidate unless, there's months' worth of media attention and ads focused on the person. So that's why we're setting up a very robust ground game. We opened up 5 offices throughout the state, and we're going to set up a website, an interactive website where people could register online to make phone calls, and they're targeted specifically to high-intensity Republican voters in Kentucky. And they could do phone banking from the comfort of their home. We're going to have that set up very soon on our 14 in 2014 website. It's going to be 14in2014.com. And that's where we're going to have kind of our 14 star candidates of the cycle, including Matt Bevin. And look, we're never going to outraise them in terms of, money on the airwaves. But the biggest comparative advantage we have is the passion and energy from the grassroots. So we got to beat them on the ground.
Do you expect in the next couple of weeks for McConnell to really up attack ads on Matt Bevin? And is there anything you can tell me about the latest attacks on Matt Bevin?
Sure, absolutely. It's kind of funny. McConnell's campaign says every day that they're not focused on Matt Bevin, they're focused on the general because Bevin's a non-entity. Yet his campaign spends all day on Twitter talking about Matt Bevin, and they keep leaking stories about him. So clearly they are worried. He's very close to reaching that kind of critical mass of name ID. Still not that well known, but he's really surging, and the more people know that this becomes a competitive race, the more they like him. And, he's starting to pull in the 30s already, which, that's at or a little bit past where Ted Cruz was at this time 2 years ago in Texas. And keep in mind, Kentucky is a much smaller, cheaper state to play in. So they're definitely worried. The latest attack they're peddling is they're saying, hey, he criticizes McConnell for bailouts, but he supported them in 2008. as the president of a private equity firm. Well, the problem is, when you read past the headline, he didn't run around campaigning in support of TARP. It's not like he petitioned his congressmen and senators to vote for TARP. TARP was passed. The bailouts were passed. The Federal Reserve policy was implemented. That was the 800-pound gorilla in the room if you're a financial services company. So one quarter in 2008, whoever wrote the prospectus for his fund kind of played up the role that TARP had in shifting the balance sheets of financial services companies, which no one disputes, and it actually proves their point. It was a temporary sugar high for the financial services industry. In the long run, it hurt the taxpayer. It hurt the broader economy in the long run. And that's what Matt Bevin is running to end. But the reality is, when you're in the private sector, the government is the 800-pound gorilla. And, you're not going to reject TARP, and you're not going to write a prospectus opining against TARP. It's kind of like a healthcare company nowadays. Let's say it's run by a conservative Republican, but unfortunately, Obamacare is now the law of the land. So, you're going to write in your kind of quarterly reports, well, due to the ACA, the following changes are going to be made, and you could be eligible for the following credits. That is the reality. That is what we seek to change, and it kind of proves our point that government is unescapable and unavoidable in many industries.
Do you think that the McConnell camp just kind of found this TARP story recently and they've been scrambling to find attack ads against Matt Bevin, or do you think they knew about this for quite some time and they've just been sitting on it and waiting to use it at the right moment?
See, the problem is that these guys have he has about $11 million in the bank. I don't even know what you do with that type of money, especially, again, in a state like Kentucky. This is not Texas or California where, TV and radio ads are very, very pricey. So there's just so much money around. They probably have one or two staffers just reading my writings at Red State Medicine Project. So I'm sure they've known about this challenge for over a year. I mean, Bevin announced last July, but they knew about him already, February 2013. There's no doubt they had a number of staffers just looking into this. So I'm sure they had all this stuff ready. They know everything about him more than Matt himself knows about himself. And they were just waiting for the most opportune time. Keep in mind, from their perspective, you don't want to give him any media attention, positive or negative, before you view him as a threat, because you don't want to kind of artificially inflate his name ID. So now it's clear they view him as a threat, and they're just going to keep bringing this stuff out. And that's the problem. Matt Bevin was a successful businessman. He ran a lot of companies. And a lot of companies that he ran, there were kind of subdivisions, and they bought out other companies. So anything that ever happened at one of these companies, or one of the companies that are owned by one of the companies he served as president, or even an investor. I mean, he invested in dozens of companies like any other investment banker, investment manager. Look, there's going to be stuff that happened. This company filed for bankruptcy. This company did that. It's all going to be couched in a little soundbite, a headline in a Politico article. And for people that have a very short attention span, it's effective. And look, this is why we lose, Bill. This is why we lose. Whenever we try to challenge these guys, they don't stand before their voters and say, you know what, I'm going to own my record. I am a moderate. I'm not a conservative. I'm a pay-for-play Republican. And here's why I believe in that. Here's why I want to continue another 6 years like that. No, they make it all about the challenger. And the challenge that we always have, running these insurgency campaigns and supporting them, is that it's not exciting or sexy to talk about a 30-year incumbent. Mitch McConnell's old hat. Like, what are you going to say about him already that people don't know? But hey, this new guy, well, what's he about? What did he do? Every little news story is kind of sensational. And they're able to, and especially because these incumbents have much more money than us, they're able to drive the narrative. So, I mean, it's incumbent upon Republican primary voters to see through this.
And it's just hilarious how the king of TARP and the king of bailouts is accusing Matt Bevin about this. And the thing that gets me is that why can't voters see through all that? Why can't they see that this guy is the one is the king of TARP? Who is he to point fingers at Matt Bevin about anything?
Exactly, but that's how they run. There's they have two mouths. I mean, one in D.C. and one in their home state. You find that with Lamar Alexander in Tennessee. I mean, he's one of the most liberal Republicans. He's out there running ads all over the state. What a conservative hero he is. And that's what they do. These people are so dishonest. And, look, once in a while you'll have a guy like Dick Lugar in Indiana, if you remember his campaign for re-election. I give him credit. He was kind of honest. This is who I am. This is the type of Republican I am. And he got crushed by 22 points. But McConnell and some of these other guys learned the lesson from him that, you run all the way to the right. You even try to put out these manipulative stories to, insinuate that your conservative challenger isn't as conservative. So they try to run to the right of our challengers like, hey, well, that's great. If you're going to be more conservative than our challengers, we'll support you another 6 years. But the problem is we know that the day the primary ends, it's over.
You always run into these operatives on social media that will come out and say, when it comes to this Kentucky race, both candidates are no good. McConnell's no good, and Bevin's no good. It's just kind of a wash this year. And that actually helps McConnell. And, you probably think to yourself, well, probably this person is working for Team McConnell to try to raise that awareness. Someone is going to think that, we'll just choose a lesser of two evils once again. And they just kind of throw that wet blanket out there on voters.
Exactly. I mean, voters who complain about the political system and how corrupt Washington is, we all really need to collectively look in the mirror. I mean, we consistently vote to reelect these guys. I mean, I believe the statistic is something like, going back to World War II, 98% of incumbents are reelected in primaries. It is that rare for the party to switch them out, even though we're all saying that their approval rating is in the single digits. But that's why, because they have more money, they have more resources. It's so hard to find kind of a citizen legislator type of guy to put himself out there. And then even if you could find a guy, it's even harder to find one that could effectively organize a campaign and raise a minimal amount of money. And then even if you get to that stage, the other team still has more money and clout to frame the messaging, and they could, frame themselves the way they want and find these little bitty things. If you're a successful doctor, I could find somewhere, that your business took some sort of healthcare subsidy. If you're a businessman, I could find that some company you associated with took stimulus funding. If you're a farmer, I could find that, 1 year your family farm took a farm subsidy. And it sounds great. This is a hypocrisy. A guy's running as a conservative. But the reality is it proves our point. That is the way the economy works. That's not the way we want it to work, but that is the way the economy is right now, that the government pretty much controls most industries. But they're able to effectively distract attention from their voting record. And look, we're going to keep falling for the status quo and keep languishing with these Washington corruptocrats if we don't change our voting habits.
And the establishment always accuses the Tea Party and the grassroots of purity tests, of who's the most conservative, but they know how to play the purity test themselves when they don't want you to look at their record and point to the little tiny blemishes on the candidate that's running against them.
Exactly, and that's the truth. We're not about purity. We're about finding people who are fundamentally with us and not with the political class. It's not, look, to my knowledge, Ted Cruz a couple weeks ago, he voted for this flood insurance provision that none of us liked. We're not going to toss him out.
Right.
It was a minor thing, and we know he's fundamentally always with us. You're always going to find stuff. You're going to find stuff from someone's personal background. But the idea is you have to be able to look through that and discern what's important, what's not, what's reflective of a person, what's not. In this case, if Bevin went around campaigning for TARP and then, a couple of years later he runs for Senate and changes his mind, well, he needs to disclose that, why he changed. In this case, it was, some sort of prospectus, a report for the financial company that was written by someone there that they mentioned it like any other mutual fund did. And he wasn't going to void that out. And he honestly probably didn't even see it. I mean, no president of the company reads every word of the prospectus. But that's what it is. And McConnell guys know this. That's the sad thing. They know this. They know it's nonsense. but they know they have effective bullets, and they'll use them, and that's what politics is all about, unfortunately.
Daniel Horowitz from the Madison Project supporting Matt Bevin in the Kentucky race against Mitch McConnell. It's always good to hear from you, and look for your articles on Red State and also the Madison Project website and also on Twitter as well. Daniel, we appreciate you stopping by here today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to being back.